Good afternoon, everyone. So at this time, if we could find our seats, I'd like to begin our keynote session. How's everyone enjoying the conference so far? Thank you. Okay, so it's my great pleasure to introduce Hill Harper. Hill Harper is a humanitarian, an award-winning actor, best-selling author, and an entrepreneur. Harper starred in ABC's #1 television drama, The Good Doctor, as well as in numerous television and film projects, including CSI NY, He Got Game, and Lackawanna Blues. Harper has served as the national spokesperson for several leading social justice organizations, including the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, the Innocence Project, One Fair Wage, and Big Brothers Big Sisters. He also sits on the board of directors for the National Black Bank Fund and was named honorary national co-chair of the redevelopment of Black Wall Street. President Obama appointed Harper to the President's Cancer Panel, where he contributed to shaping cancer policy recommendations to the White House. Additionally, Harper has authored 4 New York Times bestsellers: Letters to a Young Brother, Letters to a Young Sister, Letters to an Incarcerated Brother, and The Conversation, and his award-winning book, The Wealth Cure, that addresses ways to solve the racial wealth gap. Letters to Young Brothers was named Best Book for Young Adults by the American Library Association. Harper has been recognized with 7 NAACP Image Awards for his writing and his acting. As an extension of his empowerment books, Harper founded the Manifest Your Destiny Foundation and established the Pierce and Hill Harper Arts Foundation. Harper graduated magna cum laude from Brown University with a Bachelor of Arts degree and was named valedictorian of his department. Harper then graduated with a JD cum laude from Harvard Law School, as well as a master's degree with honors from Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He holds 10 honorary doctoral degrees, including doctorates from Howard University, Providence College, and Dillard University. Harper is a Proud Life member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He is an investor and a business owner. Harper owns The Roasting Plant, a successful franchise in downtown Detroit, is co-founder of A-Frame Brands and co-owner of the award-winning New Orleans Hotel International House. Additionally, he sits on the board of directors of Loved One, John Legend's successful skincare brand. Harper owns several commercial and residential rental properties in Detroit, Los Angeles, and Newark, New Jersey. Excuse me. Harper's unwavering commitment to individual empowerment, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and social and economic justice has made him a highly sought-after speaker on the global stage. His passion for uplifting others and creating lasting change continues to place him at the forefront of these crucial conversations. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the remarkable Hill Harper.
Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. It is great to be here, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, Caroline. I mentioned this earlier. I love Pittsburgh. Now, I know a lot of you aren't from Pittsburgh, so you really don't care. But I shot a movie here called Concussion. And when I was shooting that film, it was with Will Smith. I got a chance to spend a lot of time here and just walk around and meet so many wonderful people. And this city, this area reminds me of my hometown of Detroit. in many ways, because you're talking about folks with grit. You're talking about folks that understand perseverance and, as I said earlier, understand what bad weather looks like. And so, but with that, I want to talk about home and what makes me feel at home when I'm in Pittsburgh, quite honestly, is thinking about August Wilson. And we don't talk enough about the genius of August Wilson, but I'm going to take some time during these remarks to talk about him and talk about the Hill District here in Pittsburgh and talk about what affordable housing should look like and talk about an area of Pittsburgh that should have been developed for and by the people, yet was left off to the side for so many years until, guess what, we can build an arena there and then move the people out. August Wilson's first play in his chronology of Pittsburgh plays, if someone can tell me what the first play in that chronology is, you're going to get a prize. Now, Executive Director Laster doesn't know what that prize is because I didn't tell him you were going to give a prize. But who can tell me the first play in August Wilson's chronology of Pittsburgh plays? Okay. You're really disappointing me now, y'all. Did I tell you if you get it wrong, you owe me a prize? Oh, my God. The first play in August Wilson's chronology of Pittsburgh plays is a play called Gem of the Ocean. And when I first saw that play, about 5 minutes before the intermission, tears started coming down my eyes. And I couldn't stop crying until the end of the play. And I'm going to tell you what Gem of the Ocean is about, and I'm going to tell you why it relates to why we're here today. Gem of the Ocean is a play that argues that there's a city of bones at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean made up of tens of millions of black and brown people because they were thrown overboard during over 300 years of the Middle Passage. Folks that couldn't actually make the journey. And so there's a gem of the ocean at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean where you have to actually go and understand what August Wilson calls the city of bones if you're actually going to make a difference in your cities today. Now, what is a city of bones? A city of bones is a place where people don't have fair and equitable housing. A city of bones is a place where people don't get the level of education that's needed to actually be able to progress. The city of bones is a place where wealth inequality continues to grow, yet people turn a blind eye. A city of bones is a legacy of systemic and historical injustice and racism. And we have to be willing to go to the city of bones to do anything about it. You know, when I think about home or a house, I think about a place where dreams are formed or dreams are blocked. I think about a place where we have of safety, a place of community, a place where if we are willing to admit not having access to affordable housing is a lifelong crippling event. Not having access to safe housing, healthy housing is a lifelong crippling event. And the work that you all do is so vital and so important that oftentimes I feel like maybe you don't even recognize your own power and how many lives you impact. And so what I want to talk about, particularly at a conference like this, is the future and what's next. And coming out of a place like this or a conference like this, how can we think about innovation? How can we think about impact? And how can we think about going to the city of bones and then moving beyond? Using those bones to build something new brick by brick. Bricks are important to me. And I'll tell you a story. You know, it was mentioned that President Obama, and I wasn't actually going to tell this story, but it comes to mind now. President Obama appointed me to the president's cancer panel. I'm a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed, thank you. I was diagnosed in 2010. I had a surgery, relatively immediately, complete thyroidectomy, and I think about cancer and its scourge all the time. President Obama, before he was elected, asked me to go to Virginia for him to give some talks. And I had gotten there a little early, before the speech, and the person who was actually my driver and hosting me, he's actually running for mayor of New York City right now. Imagine that. His name is Michael Blake, my fraternity brother. And Brother Blake and I said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. Let's do something. Is there a museum around? Let's do something. He said, no, there's no museum around, but there's a plantation nearby. I said, well, let's go visit that plantation. It happened to be the plantation of the 10th president of the United States. So we go to this plantation. We walk onto it, and we're walking around, and there's this massive monument for a horse. And I go to the historian. I said, well, you know, where's the slave quarters or the monument to the slaves? And he kind of laughs. There's no monument to the slaves, but there is a monument to the horse. So I'm kind of disillusioned. I walk around back, and I look at the foundation of the main structure, and in the foundation there are bricks. And in those bricks there are little indentations. And I asked the archivist, I said, well, what are these indentations? He says, well, you know, the slaves, the women and the children would often form the bricks. They would leave their fingerprints in the bricks. And the men who, when they were laying the bricks, would always point those fingerprints out to remind folks who actually made the brick. And when we think about foundation building, we think about the future. When we think about what do we want to build, I want to ask this body here, what fingerprints are you willing to leave? What fingerprints are you willing to put into the brick to make sure that someone has an opportunity to grow? Someone has an opportunity to have housing, and that's the future. So what's next? For me, my favorite quote about the future, and E.D. Laster, I'm going to give another opportunity for a prize here. If someone can tell me who said this quote without Googling it, you'll get a prize. My favorite quote about the future is simply this: the future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and new ideas, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage into a personal commitment to the great ideals and enterprises of American society. Anybody know who said that? Barack Obama. Did I tell you if you get it wrong, you owe me a prize? No, Bobby Kennedy, 1968. And I would suggest to you, in many ways, 2025 is similar to 1968. We're in the midst of a fight. We're in the midst of a fight for what the soul of this country is. We're in the midst of a fight of what type of future do we want to see for communities? What type of future do we want to see for folks who don't have voice, who don't have agency? Because the future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and new ideas, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage into a personal commitment to the great ideals and enterprises of American society. So let's break that down first. When I went to Harvard Law School, they taught me this idea of you always want to break something down. So let's break this down. The future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and new ideas. That simply means the future does not belong to people who are afraid of innovation, afraid of doing something big and bold and taking risk, afraid of coming up with new ideas to old and big problems, new solutions. And quite often, many in our agencies and around, we end up silencing ourselves, even though you already know better ways to do it. You already know more effective ways to solve the problems that exist, yet we remain silent and we let other people out-energy us. And I'm going to get to energy in a second and why this is critical. But the future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and new ideas. So the future does not belong to people who are afraid of being innovators and afraid of taking risk and afraid of being bold. But then it goes on, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend. And then 3 words. First word, passion. That speaks to this energy point. Now, is anybody here has a PhD in physics? PhD? Master's in physics? Anybody here dated somebody who took physics? You did. Okay, good. So here's the deal. I don't want you to take my word for it, because you're going to be like, Hill, we know you're not Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's going to be speaking in next year's conference. So here's the deal about energy or passion. And this is probably, if there's one thing you remember my whole talk, this is it, y'all. This is it. Physics tells us that you cannot move a mass that's in stasis without an equal or greater amount of what to do it? Force or energy. So therefore, if I'm here and there's this, and I have my foot on this podium and I try to move it with my pinky, and I put more and more force or energy behind it, my pinky may break before this thing actually moves. But if I actually take my whole body, I can move this, I can move the chair, I can move anything because I'm putting more force behind it. So what does that mean? It means that if we're going to take on big problems like housing inequities, like racial wealth gap, like education inequities, like hunger, healthcare. If we're going to take on these big things, we need what? A great amount of energy. And it has to be collective energy. It can't be siloed energy. And part of the problem that we're seeing, I believe, amongst people who really want to see things change for the better for community, is that too many of us are working in silos. Not enough of us are actually grabbing each other's arms and working together. Yet because many times in our community, folks can agree on 9 things, disagree on 1, and people are like, I can't work with them. The opposition, they can disagree on 9, agree on 1, and they'll go storm the Capitol together. Okay, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm going to keep it cool. But the point is that collective energy is required to move something that's not moving. And to the extent you're not willing to go seek out partners across agencies, across in different offices, and find a way to amplify your collective energy, we're not going to be able to get there. And this is the key piece. Because we can talk about all the work that we do as individuals, that we do as individual agencies, commissioners, directors, all of this work. But unless we're willing to start to work together and push, we're not going to see the change we need. So, how does that work? Because, sure, I can sit up here and say it, but in actual practice, how can we put it in practice? And that's when I want to talk about this idea of being active architects of our own communities. We all, whether we like it or not, are active architects of our own community, yet I believe we haven't developed systemic approaches to making that level of impact and change that we need to make collectively. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, I think I could go around this room and ask people collectively, what is your goal, or what would you want to see manifest, or what is your agency or the work of your group or commission or whatever. You could articulate what that is, what you'd want to see happen. Yet most of the time when I talk to groups, they have trouble walking me through from an architecture perspective how that's going to manifest. What do I mean? What's the first thing an architect uses to set out to build a structure? A blueprint. Why is a blueprint the first thing? Can someone explain that to me? Why? Please. You need what? A plan. Why do you need a plan? Okay. Okay, so if you need a plan or a blueprint, why do most people not really have a plan? Why do most plans look like goals, goal sheets, rather than specific plans that actually break things down? Like, because, I hired an architect recently, and I said I had a goal of building a really nice bathroom. That was my goal. But then the architect showed up with a plan of, he asked me, well, how big are the tiles? I was like, I don't know. I just want a nice bathroom. And that's what most of us want. We want that result, and we can articulate the end or the grand vision, yet most of us actually don't take the time to figure out the type of grout we're going to use, the size of the tile, exactly where the plumbing is going to go, exactly all of these really minutiae elements that are really the tiresome part of the work, yet essential, because we actually can't end up with that result without breaking down from a blueprint perspective. And so most of the agencies and the folks that I work with, when I go and do my consulting work, is I challenge them around their blueprinting. Because their blueprints are never, ever, ever as specific as they need to be to move the meter. And people get pissed off at me when I say this, because people say, well, no, I'm working so hard. You're working hard, but you're not working smart. And this becomes a very, very tough thing for me to do, because usually I'm talking to people who have their heart in the right place. Usually I'm talking to people that really, really, they want to see these results manifest, but they're only seeing incremental results. And I do this on the private sector side. I do it on the public sector side. I do it on the individual side. And when I tell you this blueprint piece is the key and the piece where most people fall down, and it's also the piece that most people don't want to hear. Because if you really, really challenge people, you know where they say their blueprint is? Up here. You pointed to your head. That's exactly what they say. They say, no, I understand what you're saying, but I got it all right here. And then I say to them, well, if I was hiring an architect to build my house, and he or she said, I got you right here, just write the check, would you stroke the check? I'd be like, no. So why would we expect more specificity from an architect in building a structure than we expect of ourselves in building our own lives, building our own communities? That level of blueprinting and minutia is critical. And when I talk about minutia, I'm talking about breaking it down from a daily results perspective, and sometimes even an hourly perspective. People don't want to hear this. How did you move the meter last hour? What is a measurable gain towards this larger goal and vision that you have that actually moved that meter? What phone call, email, work, nail got pounded, whatever it is that moved the meter closer to this eventually big goal that we have? If you can't identify that for me, then what did we do? What we did, most of us, unfortunately, is we make a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails, have a lot of meetings, and things don't actually change. And it's hard for me to say this because y'all are the good guys, right? You're the ones that are doing the work. But I want it to be efficacious. I want to win. And why? Is because it's a matter of life or death. There are people's lives who are dependent on you being successful at your work. Literally. And that brings us to the second step of being active architects for our own life, for our community, which is foundation building. So we have this blueprint that we're working from a minutia perspective, and then we have to build a foundation around the things that we need to do. That means recruiting other people and allies. That means actually garnering and figuring out a way to get the resources. That means all of the foundational elements for us to build our communities, build our life. Third step is the framework we use, which are the choices that we make. And the fourth and final step is opening doors to new people, new ideas, new information. That's this idea of being active architects of our own community. And that's why using that level of energy that's required to do that is critical. Which leads us to our second word in this quote, which is a simple word. It's called reason, right? The future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and no ideas, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend passion. Reason. Reason is this idea of there's so much information and data about what hasn't worked. Why do we keep replicating many of those things over and over and over again? And just calling them something else or doing this, and then, I mean, you guys have heard this said 1,000 times, so I'm just going to say it to get it out of the way. We know what the definition of insanity is, right? Continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But somehow that's what we continue to do. And worse still, people in leadership positions, when someone brings something new, they pull someone to the side, pull their coat, and say, that's not the way we do it around here. That's not the way we've done it. That's not how we do it. Well, the way you've been doing it hasn't been working. So, what do? You do something different, exactly. You blow it up. Because if you're not willing to take that level of risk to do something different, what are you doing? You might as well go get one of those, work for J.P. Morgan Chase or something. I mean, come on, right? I mean, just because you're taking up a space as someone who may want to blow it up. Just go to the private sector. Or wear Hoka shoes like this and go run a marathon. You see, I see people I see wearing Hokas, they're either really runners or they fake like they're runners. I don't know which you are, but I see how you do it. Yeah. But that's what we're doing, y'all. We're acting like this is a marathon, yet we're not going anywhere. There's nothing wrong with taking risk. There's nothing wrong with actually being louder in meetings. If someone's not trying to quiet you down quite often, then you're not doing what you need to do. When's the last time someone said, hey, pull back? When's the last time? If they're not saying slow down, stop, be quiet, that's not the way it works. You're not pushing up against it hard enough. It's true. We need you all because here's the deal. The folks that I call the opposition, they have no problem being loud. They have no problem being aggressive. They have no problem making a lot of noise, showing up, being aggressive, bold, saying outlandish, ridiculous things. I need you to say some more outlandish, ridiculous things. If people aren't saying, I can't believe she said that, then you're not saying anything. Right? Because they're doing it all the time to the point where you actually start to question yourself. Well, man, I know that's not true, but maybe it's true. We got to go to the city of bones. You got to be willing to go to the city of bones. And then that leads us to the third word in this run of this quote, which is my favorite word in the English language, actually. It's the etymology of the root of the word. If you speak French, you know that the antithesis of the word courage is not fear. What courage is coeur, the French word for heart. So courage is getting into your heart. It's not about saying I'm fearless or I'm this. It's like, no, getting into your heart is the only thing that we can do to get through the challenging pieces. How do we enter and stay in our heart to make sure we continue to do this work that is so necessary? If you're doing something right now that doesn't make your heart beat faster, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if you've given in. If you've thrown your hands up and quietly basically said, you know, my resistance is over. It reminds me of the study. So, a lot of people think that this is Pavlov's dog, but this is not Pavlov's dog. There was a study where you wouldn't talk about it publicly now, but you took a electric pad and you put a dog on it, and you set the dial to shock the dog. And the first time the dog gets shocked, the dog jumped and whined. They put the dog back on, second time, jumped, but not as high. Eventually, with the exact same setting of shock, the dog did what? Stop moving. Stop jumping. People in communities that experience generational trauma at a point stop. But that doesn't mean they're not being inflicted with wounds on a daily basis that we all can identify. So those of us that may have some perspective, that aren't experiencing the shock, it's incumbent upon us to find a way to remove them, to help either stop the shock or create some new place for them to go and be. And that has to come out of your heart. It's not a head thing. It's not a data thing. It's a heart thing. It's your core. And that's when we know that this work is the work we want to do and is resonant. And so, with that, I just want to say how much that I celebrate and respect the work you do and share with you a few of my favorite lines from Gem of the Ocean, which kind of relates to getting into your heart. Because it's so easy to get removed from it. It's so easy to forget. This is why you do the work you do. And so there's a character in Gem of the Ocean. Her name is Aunt Esther, and she's really the historical wisdom. She's mythically 257 years old. And she says in this play, you got to tell life yes. You got to affirm it. That's what the tears are for. They wash your eyes because you can't see nothing clear till you wipe the tears away. We see things, I think, every day in this work that if we're in touch with our heart will make us cry. Will make us tear up, and that's okay. That means that you're still in touch with this. But the tears are there to clear your eyes. You wipe them away. And God damn it, you go in and work. That's it. Honest, there's a character in the play called, his name is Citizen Barlow, and he's kind of the character who has been beaten down. The character that feels like he can't go on. And he says in the play, he says, I'm carrying 300 years of history on my back, and it's weighing me down. All the work that you're doing, there's so much history behind it and so much weight. And sure, it can weigh you down. and it will weigh you down. What are you putting in place in your life to make sure you get that weight off? Because we need you at your best. And if you're feeling tied down and weighed down and hurt and crippled and not able to move, then you're not going to be able to do and bring the level of energy we need you to bring. So please put people in your life, mechanisms in your life to get the weight off. Because we need you agile. We need you energized and risk-taking. And we need you to live like this and recognize this. And to me, this quote from the play is very, very prescient for where we are right now and the work that you do. This is from a character in that play called Sally Two Kings. And it's a bold and moral declaration that speaks to systemic injustice. And it's very simple. Sally Two Kings said, "You can't rule with the law if the law ain't just." You can't rule with the law if the law ain't just. And so we have to continue to work, to change, to push for justice for all. And make sure that our legislators and the legislation reflects that. And finally, if you destroy the past, then you destroy the future. The past is all we got. That's Aunt Esther reminding us that we have to look back and see that what's going on today is just a replay. And look at the work that was done to fight against injustice, to fight against inequality. There's already a blueprint. The question is, are we willing to do that level of work? And that means that back then, after a lunch like this, we're all going to go out and get arrested today. Who's with me? So think about that. Think about the work. And think about what's next. And think about the fact that all those quotes that I just read were written in a cafe less than 2 miles from where we sit right now by a genius who would sit every day in a coffee shop on Hill Street, in the Hill District, and write plays so that one day maybe somebody would sit in a conference. Like, I'm going to get emotional just saying it, right? This is legacy, y'all. We're here to make a difference. And this person wrote plays so that maybe these lines could get recited, so that maybe it can inspire someone to change somebody's life. That's what this is. We have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to work hard, and we have to be willing to speak truth to power and then do the work that matches that. We're all in this together. And if we understand that and recognize it and do this work, we will see things change for the better. Thank you guys for having me. God bless you.
So we would like for Hill to come up on stage once more. And let's give him a round of applause again as he comes up. I think everyone knows that the PHRC, we give a lot of awards out. But they're awards with a purpose and a moral compass and a moral imperative to why we do it. And this is 2025 Housing Equality Conference, Navigating Today's Challenges and Building a Fairer Tomorrow, presented to Hill Harper for your dedication in promoting housing equality for all on this day, April 8th, 2025. Yeah, with the team. Where do you want us at, right here? So we also want to hold space for Senator Jay Costa, who does a lot of things in this space, not just in Pittsburgh, but throughout the Commonwealth around affordable housing, housing equality, housing equity. And it reads as 2025 Housing Equality Conference, Navigating Today's Challenges and Building a Fairer Tomorrow, presented to Senator Jay Costa for your dedication in promoting housing equality for all on this day, April 8th, 2025. And after we give it to him, he's also going to bring some remarks for however long he wants, because he's the senator. Senator, if we can get you right over here. Sure. You guys gonna get into this? Yes. Commissioner Harper, come on. Get right here.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the recognition, and I'm going to start by saying thank you to all of you for the work that you do. And certainly want to thank the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission for the work that they do in fighting discrimination day in and day out. But all of you, the professionals who are here, the leaders, the advocates, the work that you do allows us the opportunity to be able to continue to advance many of the things that are important to all of you and to the residents we all represent collectively. I've been honored to serve as the Democratic leader in the Pennsylvania State Senate, and for a number of years, housing issues has been a high priority for our caucus. In fact, just this past Wednesday, we had a rally in the Rotunda, a press conference in the Rotunda, talking about and recognizing that this being Fair Housing Month here across the country and in Pennsylvania, reflecting on the wonderful things that have come out of the Fair Housing Act from a number of years ago, and more importantly, the challenges we now face, we all face, you all face, and continuing to be able to fight the discrimination that's taking place, still takes place, and the barriers that still exist in our Commonwealth and around our country with respect to fair and affordable housing. That's an area that I've been focusing on for a number of years. I'm very proud of the great working relationship I have with our folks at PHFA and the work that they do in terms of affordable housing, making sure that in our communities that I represent and across the Commonwealth, that our voice is heard in those meetings. And I'm proud to say that played a significant role in making sure, for example, in just the last 2 years, that we've been able to get 12 awards in the city of Pittsburgh itself, working closely with the city administration. We're going to continue to fight along those lines. My biggest concern, though, is unless we speak out, and as we did just last week, to talk about some of the things that are taking place, things that we're trying to do in Harrisburg, which we'll continue to work on, but more importantly, what's coming out of Washington, D.C. is frightening. And the steps we have to take to ensure that our voices, our collective voices are heard, that we will be pushed back on some of these things. We know that the resources that have been directed to various organizations across the Commonwealth first were cut, and then frozen, and now may be flowing again, but the uncertainty that continues to exist with respect to enforcement to make sure that folks don't continue to discriminate, and we know that they will, and they are. We have to take steps to be able to fight back, and our voices need to be heard. So I want to say thank you very much for recognizing the work that I do and our caucus does in this space. We will continue to fight for some of the things that are really important. Certainly the work that we've been doing and will continue to do, for example, in programs like the FAIR program through PHFA, which we will continue to fight to continue to grow, to make sure that we're able to do more, because that's where housing conversations are taking place, whether it's rehabilitating housing, whether it's making more units available, or whether it's developing programs that go into the community and let folks know what their rights are and what can be done with regard to housing. We're going to continue to do that. A whole home repair program, something to me that's extremely important. We may have to call it a different name because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't like the program. We like it because, to me, it stabilizes neighborhoods, it stabilizes communities, it allows people to stay in their home, and when you stabilize someone's home, you stabilize that community, and it works well for everyone involved. But there's a number of other things that we're going to continue to do. We're trying to create our own statewide LIHTC program to grow that program, and many other things along those lines. One of the pieces of legislation I've been working on with a number of colleagues relates to eviction ceiling. Making sure that we take steps to ensure that those individuals who, for some reason or another, end up finding themselves, at least in initial processes of an eviction proceeding, that never make their way to the final determination. Those records that reflect that should be sealed. They should not be available to renter or to landlords who can go back and look for 7 years to see that that's something that they shouldn't be able to see, particularly when it doesn't result in an eviction itself. If that happens, that's a different conversation. But at the end of the day, these are some of the things that create barriers for folks to be able to find housing. And to me and to our colleagues in the Senate Democratic Caucus, these are measures that are important to us. So we will continue to raise the awareness about discrimination, not certainly in housing, but the work that in other spaces as well that the Human Relations Commission does, whether it be in education. We talked about housing and accommodations. These are all areas that we will continue to fight and work for. But again, my thanks go to all of you. You all are on the ground dealing with these issues and fighting and advocating to make changes in our communities. And I want to say thank you very much for that. And thank you for recognizing the work that we've been doing, we'll continue to do. And thanks again for having me today. Thank you.